There's an ancient symbol that appears across civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia, yet arriving at the same image. A serpent, coiled in perfect symmetry, its jaws clamped around its own tail. The Greeks called it Ouroboros. The Egyptians carved it into tombs. Alchemists drew it in the margins of forbidden texts. It represents something both elegant and horrifying. A system that sustains itself by consuming itself. Perfectly closed, perfectly efficient, eternally in motion, yet incapable of producing anything new. No external energy enters, no waste exits. The circle is complete. And that completion is its death sentence. Now, watch what happens when you apply that symbol to an entire industry. MMOs did not decline because players left. They declined because players stayed. Because a genre whose customers never leave becomes economically impossible to compete with, and therefore impossible to renew. The genre followed its economic logic to absolute perfection, and that perfection made its extinction inevitable. What you're watching isn't failure. It's a closed loop completing itself. It's the serpent's mouth reaching its tail. And the moment that circle closes, nothing new can grow inside it. This is not a story about burnout, TikTok brain, or kids these days lacking commitment. This is about a business model that achieved its ultimate success condition, permanent customer capture, and discovered, far too late, that success and sustainability are not the same thing. Picture a dead genre. It doesn't look like a graveyard. It looks like a gold mine. Servers humming with millions of logins, revenue hitting record highs. But ask any venture capitalist if they'd fund the next great MMO and watch them laugh you out of the room. That's the difference between a body and a ghoul. The comfortable explanations. Modern gamers have TikTok brain. Nobody wants to commit anymore. Players just burned out. Are psychologically soothing, precisely because they externalize systemic collapse onto individual weakness. Your short attention span, your lack of dedication, your moral failure to stay subscribed forever. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. MMOs aren't dying because they failed. They're dying because they succeeded so catastrophically well that they devoured their own future. Here's the foundational principle. Games that finish create demand for their successors. Games that never end consume the market that would fund them. In healthy genres, completion creates circulation. You finish a game, your appetite resets. You're back in the market, hungry, available, signaling demand that attracts investment. The genre grows because players never stop moving. MMOs broke this cycle by eliminating exit, and in doing so, they eliminated their own future. Let's get one thing straight. When someone points at World of Warcraft's quarterly earnings and declares, "See, MMOs are thriving," that person is confusing a harvest with a heartbeat. The real health metric for any genre isn't how much money are the survivors extracting. It's how much risk capital is flooding in. Look at how healthy genres actually work. Elden Ring succeeds, and suddenly you have Lies of P, Black Myth Wukong, Lords of the Fallen, Where Winds Meet. Players finish Elden Ring after 100 hours and immediately start hunting for the next Souls-like. They're not trapped, they're liberated back into the market, hungry and available. Publishers see players circulating through multiple Souls-likes and think, we should fund more of these. The genre grows because finishing one game makes you available for 5 others. That's an open system. Capital flows toward proven appetite. Studios compete. Innovation accelerates. Now watch what MMOs did instead. WoW releases an expansion every 2 years. But here's the difference. you never finish. The daily quests don't stop. The gear treadmill doesn't pause. The raid schedules continue. You're not playing an expansion and then becoming available for other games. You're permanently occupied. Let me be concrete about what this actually means. From 2010 to 2020, I didn't just play WoW. I was removed from the gaming market entirely. Between the raid schedules, the arenas, the dungeon grinding, I didn't have time for other MMOs, let alone other AAA games. I watched critically acclaimed titles come and go while I was locked into MMO grind mode. This isn't hypothetical. This is the lived experience of anyone who played these games seriously. When the next expansion dropped, I didn't return as a refreshed customer. I returned as someone who never left. This is the forever game design, and it killed the genre. MMOs didn't just want your playtime, they wanted your identity. They architected systems where not playing meant falling irreversibly behind, where taking a break meant social exile, where trying another MMO meant abandoning years of progress. Sure, you can leave. The unsubscribe button exists. But the psychological architecture, the fear of missing out, the social obligations, the fear of irrelevance, makes leaving painful. And here's the paradox. When you finally do leave, you leave forever. Once you see the loop clearly, once you understand what was being extracted, you can't go back. The forever game doesn't just capture players. It eventually produces people who graduate from the entire model and never return. And here's the proof this isn't accidental. It's architectural. Ask yourself, why won't Blizzard make WoW 2? Modern graphics, modern combat, modern animations. It should be obvious. But they won't, because WoW 2 would destroy WoW 1's money printer. A true WoW 2 would require Blizzard to say, your WoW 1 characters don't matter here. And the moment they do that, players are freed back into the market. You can quit WoW 1 without losing 15 years of identity. You can compare WoW 2 to Final Fantasy XIV, to Where Winds Meet, to anything. You can leave if it's not good enough. That destroys Blizzard's biggest advantage. Locked-in customers with infinite switching costs. Normal franchises love sequels. They increase hype, create demand. But forever games don't work that way. A sequel breaks retention. The old game is supposed to print money forever, not retire gracefully. Blizzard already tested this. Cataclysm, Shadowlands, Dragonflight. Every reset made the community freak out, because resets revealed the truth. Players aren't staying because the game is good. They're staying because they're invested. So Blizzard learned, never touch the core. Milk it forever. WoW's outdated engine isn't a limitation. It's a retention feature. A modern WoW would need new combat systems, new animations, new physics, which would break add-ons, muscle memory, old content, which would force a real sequel, which Blizzard cannot afford. WoW didn't stagnate because Blizzard is lazy. WoW stagnated because Blizzard is trapped by its own success. WoW 2 would be better for players, but worse for the balance sheet, so it will never exist. And this is what made WoW uniquely lethal to the genre. Guild Wars 2 tried horizontal progression. ESO offered one-time purchases. Final Fantasy XIV tells players to take breaks. These weren't counterexamples to the forever game curse. They were mutations trying to survive in WoW's shadow. Because WoW had already perfected the model so completely that competing on retention would have been suicide, they had to coexist with a predator that had already sequestered the majority of the market. So why did it have to be this way? Arthas didn't become the Lich King because he wanted power. He became the Lich King because he was terrified of a world he couldn't afford to lose. So he froze it. locked it, preserved it. WoW made the same choice. MMOs are ruinously expensive to run. Server farms that never sleep, 24/7 ops teams, content treadmills that can't stop moving. A living world costs millions of dollars a month just to exist. And a world like that cannot survive uncertainty. It needs control. To get that predictability, the game must convert your fun leisure time into their quarterly stability. The mechanisms are everywhere. Progress resets that devalue everything you earned last patch. Seasonal content that expires if you don't log in right now. Daily quest systems that transform playing a game into clocking in for your shift. The treadmill isn't a bug. It's the load-bearing wall. Because here's the nightmare scenario. What if people finish? The servers don't care about your satisfaction. The servers need your subscription. So the game is architecturally designed to ensure you never arrive at done. This is the body of the Serpent, the circulation system. Your time converts into their stability. Your grind produces content. Your presence validates other players' presence. The loop sustains itself. You don't stay because it's fun. You stay because leaving means abandoning a version of yourself you spent 3 years constructing. The social capital, the guild reputation, the achievements that prove you were there, that you mattered. You're not playing a game anymore. You're circulating through a closed system, providing the energy that keeps the Serpent alive. But the Serpent doesn't just feed on its own body. It starves everything outside it. This is the curse of the forever game. Every successful MMO player is one less potential customer for every other MMO. Remember Elden Ring? One player finishing it creates demand for 5 other Souls-likes. Lies of P, Black Myth Wukong, Lords of the Fallen. Completion creates circulation. MMOs do the opposite. A WoW player isn't a satisfied customer waiting for the next great MMO. A WoW player is gone. Their time is allocated. Their identity is bound. Their switching costs are measured in years. They're not circulating through the market. They've been removed from it. The Serpent's tail doesn't connect to new life. It connects back to its own mouth. Investors look at the genre and see 2 things. Spectacular margins. Great, but 0 available customers. Catastrophic. Existing players are locked in for years, which is perfect if you're WoW or Final Fantasy XIV. But if you're trying to enter the market, there's no one left to sell to. And that's a death sentence. So capital avoids MMOs entirely. Not because they're unprofitable, because the market is foreclosed. WoW's billions don't inspire new MMO development. They prove that new MMOs can't compete for customers who are already captured. Every quarterly earnings call celebrating strong retention metrics is another signal to the market. These customers are unavailable. The genre survives by consuming its own future. The Serpent is perfectly self-sufficient, perfectly stable, perfectly circular, and therefore perfectly sterile. Now let's talk about the most instructive case study in modern MMO history. Forget what Asmongold says in his videos. Watch what he does. Here was the perfect MMO organism. Not just a world-first raider or a rank 1 gladiator. Those are just elite workers inside a system that still owns them. Asmongold was something rarer. He didn't just play World of Warcraft. He solved it. He mastered every system, accumulated everything worth accumulating, turned MMO expertise into a multi-million-dollar career that transcended the game itself. His identity, his income, his cultural authority, all perfectly aligned with the genre's incentives. If MMO 1.0 was ever going to keep anyone forever. It was him. And then, he graduated. Look at his pattern now. He drops into where winds meet, masters the core systems in a week, enjoys the concentrated hit of dopamine that comes from competence without commitment, and then leaves. Before the game can sink its hooks in. Before "I should log in" becomes "I have to log in." Asmongold didn't escape the system. He reached the point where the loop became visible. And once you see the Ouroboros from above, once you understand its shape, its mechanics, its inevitable trajectory, you can't go back inside it. He looked at the actual endgame of MMO 1.0, logging in forever, circulating through the same content eternally, paying higher time taxes for diminishing returns. And he said, nah. The fact that the genre's most dedicated evangelist now variety streams instead of maining an MMO isn't player failure. It's clarity. The Serpent is still there, still circulating, but he stepped outside it. And from that vantage point, the shape becomes undeniable. So that's where we are. The millennials aged out. Gen Z never arrived. The perfect player graduated and left. No new blood, no risk capital. Just customers already owned, circulating inside a loop they cannot see. The genre didn't die because it failed. It died because it succeeded. The head consumed without exit. Players removed from circulation. Markets suffocated by their own success. The body demanded control. Operational costs converted play into obligation. Arthas freezing his world to preserve it. The tail foreclosed investment. Every captured player, one less customer for everyone else. Capital fled a market with no one left to sell to. The witness proved mastery leads to exit. Even the perfect organism graduates once the loop becomes visible. Each mechanism rational, each metric achieved, each success condition met, and the genre died anyway. The mouth met the tail, the circle closed. WoW sits at the center, still circulating, still profitable, still perfectly designed. And that perfection is indistinguishable from death. Like Arthas on his frozen throne, the Lich King perfected preservation and created a world where nothing new could grow. When he fell, the throne still needed a keeper. Frozen empires don't end, they just stop mattering. The market sees this, it mutates. Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy XIV, ESO, each attempting escape, each still orbiting the corpse. And now, where winds meet. Optional multiplayer, different economic model, a mutation that might signal resurrection. I've argued elsewhere that this represents something genuinely new, structurally, architecturally, perhaps economically too. That's for another time. But this essay isn't about hope. It's about what completes itself. WoW still prints money. Servers still hum. Raiders still log in Tuesday nights. But the world moved on. No new players, no new capital. Just defenders protecting an empire that exists only in memory. The genre optimized customer capture until it sterilized its own market. It perfected retention until it foreclosed investment. It created a closed system so efficient it consumed the conditions required for renewal. The Ouroboros completes its circle. The serpent's mouth meets its tail. Perfect preservation and perfect death are the same thing. A perfect system, perfectly closed, perfectly circular, perfectly profitable, perfectly dead.